Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. In today's video I will be building a Linux management server that will be responsible for patching as well as automation through Ansible. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, and if you like this video, please click the like button. So I had to make a quick change to the template, so I converted it back to a virtual machine. But to build out the HQ management server, I'm just going to clone as is. So I'm going to clone to a virtual machine. I'm going to call this HQMGT. Click Next. Select our server and click Next. Click Next. I'm not going to do any of those, and click Next and Finish. Okay, and the server is provisioning. So while this is finishing, I do want to point out that I have run into several issues with deploying this server. So what I did for this last run is I created an Ansible role for this server, and I will be running through that in just a minute. So before I power on the machine, I want to add in a new disk. So a new hard drive. I'm going to change this to thin provision so we can keep as much of our space as we can. I'm gonna set this to 100 gigs, and then I'm gonna click OK, and then I'm going to power on the virtual machine. Alright, and I'm going to connect to it 10.0.51 250. Alright, and while that is still powering up, I'm going to grab the local admin password. So I'm going to click open, log in as ladmin, and then I'm going to sudo root and pull up my notes. So step one, I'm going to use the set hostname command. I'm sorry, actually it's hostname ctl set hostname hqmgt.secnetwork.org, and then if I type in hostname, it's now HQ management hqmgt.secnetwork.org. Next, I'm going to update the IP address of the system. Let me full screen this, which is it's going to be etc sysconfig network scripts, and then it's infcfg, and this is ENS 192. We're going to change the IP from 250 to 91. And then I'm going to reboot so that those changes can take effect. And while that is rebooting, I'm going to pull up the DNS snap-in, MMC snap-in, and just point out that in earlier attempts to build this server, I have already created a DNS entry for HQ management at 51.91, and I created a repos CNAME that points to the server. And additionally, I made some firewall changes. So let's pull up the firewall, hqfw1.secnetwork.org. I'm going to log in a second. First, first, let's get back into HQ management. Okay, let me go grab the firewall password, 1 sec. Alright. So I'm going to log in as admin, accept acknowledge statement. Alright, so I'm going to close out this. Okay, so I created, I think, 2 or 3 policies for this to work. The first one is this patch management policy. Let me just step through it real quick. So this is from the server network from HQ management to the WAN, and the applications that are permitted are NTP, rsync, SSL, web browsing, and Yum. And we're doing the application defaults, and we're allowing the traffic through. And then I created this rule so that I can pull down and sync the GitHub repository that I'm using for Ansible, and I'll probably create a few more repositories throughout this project. But same thing, from the server network, from the management server to the WAN, and this is Git, GitHub, and SSH. I was doing the application defaults and allowing the traffic through. When I created the template, this rule was created. This rule will actually be deleted as soon as this management server is finished. So now I'm going to jump back over here and begin. So first things first, I'm going to partition the drive that I created. So first thing I'm going to do is cfdisk dev sdb. I'm going to do DOS for the label type. I'm going to create a new partition, 100 gigs primary, and then I'm going to change the type to LVM. And I'm going to write those changes and quit cfdisk. Next, I'm going to do pvcreate dev, and then I'm going to add the sdb1 disk, and then I'm going to do a vgcreate, and I believe vgcreate, and then we're going to do vg repos, since this is for the repositories, and we're going to add the disk sdb1. And then we're going to create a logical volume using lvcreate minus n, which we're going to call this lv repos minus l. This is going to be 100% free. And then we're going to specify the volume group vg repos. Alright, next we're going to format our partition. So mkfs.xfs dev vg repos lv repos. Alright, now that that's done, I'm going to edit the fs tab file, vpc fs tab. And I'm going to create a new line, dev mapper, make sure that was right. This is going to be vg repos dash lv repos, and we're going to put this under opt, and the type is xfs. defaults and 0, 0. Okay, and to test it, we're going to run mount-a, which should auto-mount our drive, and it did. Here is the new drive in partition. Okay, so now that that's done, there's a few packages I need to install manually. So we're going to use dnf-y install tmux epal release. Let's just install this two first. Alright, and now we can do dnf install -y ansible. Okay, that's different. Maybe I misspelled it. Here we go. Maybe I mistyped it. That's what I meant to say. Same thing, I guess. All right, and one more package, which is going to be dnf install git. Okay, so we're going to exit. I'm going to start up tmux because this process is actually going to take a long while once the scripts are kicked off. So first thing I'm going to do is paste in the config command to set my username. And then I'm going to set a global setting for email. And then I'm going to clone my repository and say yes. Alright, so now I have my repository, and I'm going to do a git check out. If I could type, I'm going to do a git check out, and then I'm going to run. So before I run this, let me just go through the role real quick. So the role that I created is 3 main tasks. So let's start with the packages. So we're going to install wget, rsync, policy core utilities, and the web server nginx. And then we're going to configure those services with nginx. We're going to create a repository directory under repos, opt/repos, I mean. I'm going to copy in the config file, which I'll show after this. We're going to open up the firewall. We're going to set some SE Linux permissions, apply those permissions, enable the nginx service, and start that service. And then next we're going to do config repo sync. And here all we're doing is copying our sync script to ops, and then we're creating a cron tab for monthly syncing. And then we start off the sync through the script, and this is what takes a while. The repository size is about 70 gigs. And just since I'm here, the main basically just executes these three in order. So now let's jump over to files. So under repos, this is the host file, so that when we go to repos.secnetwork.org, we are pointed to the op/repos directory, and we have auto index on. And then for the sync repos, what I'm doing is I am creating a bunch of directories using this for if then code. So for each of these directories, it's going to check to see if they exist, and then if it doesn't, it's going to create it. Then I'm going to wget the latest GPG key from CentOS, and then I'm going to sync these specific directories and repositories. I am also going to sync EPEL because I use a lot of packages within this locally, and the purpose for this is so that only this server will have access out to the internet, and every other Linux server within the network will point to this server and won't need direct internet access. So I think that is all she wrote in terms of what I did in here. I don't have any defaults, nothing in the handlers. Yeah, I didn't make any changes to most of these files. So at the root, I'm just going to call, let me just double check, ansible-playbook, roles, HQ management server, and then I'm going to call tasks main.yaml. And if there aren't any issues, this will kick right off and start the process. So while this is running, I'm going to speed it up a little bit. I will jump back in if there's an error or an issue, but otherwise I will remain on. I will let this run, and we'll be back once it is complete. Hello. So while this is running, I just wanted to go through a couple quick things. So I just wanted to show that the firewall the firewall does have HTTP open, and if I do a cron job/l, this is the cron job that we scheduled for monthly, and then if we jump over to etc mginx config.d, and actually let me do real quick. Let's see. Here is the config file that we copied over. So one of the things I really enjoy about Ansible is being able to create consistent servers and consistent roles. So I can clone this server multiple times and have it work exactly the same way. And if there are updates or tweaks, I update the role, and then I can apply that to one or many servers. I've already started to review the website, and it does appear that it is working. So CentOS 8 upstream, so packages are already coming in. Doesn't look like the repo data has populated yet, and this is still this is running. So I can keep check on its progress by looking at the amount of space it's using. I expect this to be around 73 gigs once it's done. I will actually, before I drop back off, I'll let this run, but what I'm going to do is power back up my template here. So there is a rule I need to create real quick since I'm here. I'm going to create it under here. This will be SECNET HQ management. Patch management. This is going to be interzone rule, and we're going to say from AAA, DMZ, management, and security. As long as it comes from the headquarters network, subnet. Yeah, that's fine. To serve HQ management. And the application is web browsing and yum. Application defaults, and we're going to allow. So this is the rule that will be used for once other Linux servers are deployed in these specified networks. They will automatically be able to pull updates from the patch management server. So I'm going to commit that change, and I'm going to SSH into 10.051.250 and maximize that. Login as ladmin. Grab my password real quick. Sudo up. So I've already copied the files in. So let's take a quick look at them. So these files have already been formatted to where the formatted correctly for the base URL. So they'll pull patches from repo.secnetwork.org, CentOS, and then the release version, base OS, and then the base OS, base architecture, /OS. So all of these are enabled with the exception of CR and fast tracked, which I'm not syncing. When I pulled them down before, there weren't many, if any, patches or files within them, so I'm going to hold off on that. And for ePal, it's the same. I'm downloading what they call the everything branch, and what I'm going to do is go into yum repo.d and take the default repos and move them into a new directory. I'm going to call it bkup. I'm going to move star.repo into bkup. And I'm going to move star.repo here. And now I've brought those files in. And now I can go ahead and shut down the server. And so I'm done with the firewall, I'm done with this for now. So now that this is shut down, I can go ahead and convert it back to a template. And there we go. So let's check on the status of this. And we're at 4 gigs, so still a long ways to go. Alright, so I'm going to let this run and we'll be back after it's finished. Okay, so it looks like the script is successfully completed. So I'm going to run df-h again. And it looks like the amount used is 34 gigs, which is somewhat less than I was expecting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rerun the script once again. Alright, so it looks like it is complete. So we can go into ops, repos, and take a look. So we have it looks like the files we needed came down. So there is one more quick thing I want to do. I'm going to run a Ansible script after I create it. So I'm going to be back in a second. Alright, so the last thing I'm going to do in this video is join the HQ management server to the AD domain. And what I did was I created a ansible-playbook. So I'm going to start up tmux. Go into Ansible, and I'm going to do a let's see, a git. Hang on one sec. let's do a git pull. Perfect. Okay. Let's minimize that. Okay, so I was able to download the playbook, and I'm going to step through this real quick. All right, so excuse me. So the first thing this playbook will do is it will request the password that will be used for the service account that will be used to join this. Maybe down the line, I will use some kind of vault to store this password, but for now, I'll just paste it in. The next thing we'll do is install the required packages in order to add this system to the domain. And then before we proceed with anything else, we will verify whether or not the system's already been joined to the domain. And we'll install the pexpect using pip. And then we'll jump right into joining the system. So we'll use the realm join command. So we specify the user account that we'll use to join, and then the place within AD that we want the system to be placed, and of course the domain that we're joining. And then we'll pass in the password based on the request above. So the next part will be to update the SSSD configuration file. I turn use fully qualified name off. It's just easier to not use the fully qualified names. And then we restart SSSD, and then we modify, and then we'll notify the handler to restart SSSD at the end, and then we will modify the creation of the home directories. Instead of doing it, I believe it's home /%d, which is the domain /user. I just put the user within the home directory, and then I update the permit realm to only allow domain admins to log in, and then I add domain admins group to the sudoers file, again with the no password flag, because at some point in a later video we will be disabling the ability to use a password through a two-factor solution. And then we restart SSSD. So what I'm going to do is kick this off with the ansible-playbook, and then I'm going to specify HQMGT for management, and then our playbook, which is playbook domain join. And then the first thing it does is asks for the password. So let me go grab that from the database. Paste that in, and the script then will proceed. So I'm going to let this run and jump back in if there's any issues. And just like that, within a few seconds, our server has been joined to the domain. What I'm going to do is reboot this server just to refresh all the different services. So I'm going to do shutdown -R now. And then I'm going to jump over here. So where I placed the system was under SECNET, System, Servers, Linux. And if I refresh, here is the server that we just joined. All right, so now I'm going to restart, and I'm going to log in as myself. So as you can see, I was able to authenticate as my domain account. It created my home directory, and I should be able to sudo to root because that's how I set it up. That's all she wrote. So now I have a domain joined system. So that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and please remember to hit the like button. And if you want to see additional content, then please remember to subscribe. Thank you.